The iron wheels of the Union Pacific train gave a long, tired groan as they stopped in the lonely Wyoming territory. Snow covered everything in sight. The land was empty, white, and cold enough to steal a person's breath. It was the end of the line. For Miriam Dubois, it felt like the end of her life as she knew it. She stepped down from the train with her small, scuffed carpet bag, the only thing she owned in the world. 2 dresses, a worn Bible, a bar of soap, and 73 cents. That was her whole life now. She had traveled 3 long days from Philadelphia, hoping for a new start. Hoping that the man who answered her letter, Mr. Elias Thorne, would be waiting with a warm smile, maybe even a flower. There was no man. There was no smile. There was only silence. Cheyenne was not the city she had imagined from the pamphlets. It was barely a town, just a few wooden buildings standing like tired skeletons against the snow. The stage depot was dark. The windows were frozen over. No one greeted her. No one even noticed her. She waited 10 long minutes on the silent platform, her heart sinking deeper into her chest. Her hope, warm at first, was turning into something cold and heavy. Then she heard it. A wagon, the crunch of wheels on frozen ground. A man rode into view, driving a heavy buckboard, pulled by 2 strong horses. He looked nothing like a hopeful groom. He looked like a man carved from the land, hard, tall, broad-shouldered, with an old scar across his face and a beard that needed trimming. Snow dusted his hat as he stared at her with gray eyes that showed no welcome at all. This was him. It had to be him. "Mr. Thorne?" she asked, her voice shaking. He stared at her like she was a puzzle he didn't like the look of. "I am," he finally said, voice deep and rough. But he wasn't looking at her. He was looking past her, searching the empty platform for someone else. Someone who wasn't her. Someone he would have preferred. "I answered the advertisement," Miriam said softly. She held out the letter she had carried across the country. Her hand trembled in the cold. Elias Thorne looked at the letter, then at her face, then at her skin. Shock hit him first, then anger, then something worse. He stepped back from her, as if the cold had suddenly reached his bones. Miriam felt the sting deep in her chest. She had seen that look before, many times. It was the look that stripped away her name, her dignity and her hope, leaving behind only one thing. "A problem? There's no one else?" he asked sharply. "No, sir," she whispered. "Just me." He cursed under his breath and turned away from her, pressing his forehead against one of his horses like he needed strength just to stand there. Miriam's heart pounded like a trapped bird. She had traveled 1,800 miles for this. For him. And he wanted nothing to do with her. Finally, he turned around, his face hard as stone. "Get in the wagon!" It wasn't kind, it wasn't welcoming, it wasn't anything close to what she had prayed for. But she had no choice. The snow was falling faster, the wind growing cruel. She climbed into the buckboard alone, her humiliation burning under her coat. They passed through the tiny street of Cheyenne, and men stopped what they were doing to stare at her. First, a quick look at Elias, then a long, slow stare at her. Their eyes were sharp, cold, cutting into her like knives. She felt stripped bare under their gaze. She lifted her chin and pretended she saw nothing. Elias didn't speak. He didn't look at her. He just drove into the white wilderness with a jaw set like iron. The storm grew worse. Snow stung her cheeks. The horses' breath came out in clouds as they fought through the deepening drifts. The cold bit through her gloves and into her bones. Hours later, Elias pulled the wagon to a stop. "We're here." Miriam stared. A small cabin. A barn, nothing else, no neighbors, no town, no help. Only a frozen world stretching into forever. Inside the cabin, the fire was low. The room was cramped and lonely. Elias didn't take off his coat. He didn't meet her eyes. "There's been a mistake," he said quietly. "A mistake." The word crushed her. "The ad. I didn't place it," he said. "My brother Jacob did." Quote, Miriam felt the floor tilt under her feet. Where is he?" Elias pointed to a fresh, pale patch on the wall covering a bullet hole. "He's gone," he said. "Cattle thieves. 3 weeks ago." She sank into a chair, her heart breaking for a man she had never met. She had come to marry a dead man, and the living one didn't want her at all. "You've come a long way for nothing," Elias said. "I don't need a wife, and not—" He stopped himself, jaw tight, but she knew the word he didn't say. "Not you." Outside, the blizzard screamed. Inside, her future collapsed. "You can take the cot," he said. "In the morning, you're going back." But the storm had other plans, and fate wasn't done with them yet. The storm did not let up. It took the cabin, the barn, and the whole valley in its grip. For 3 long days, the wind screamed around the logs like something alive. Elias and Miriam were trapped together inside a wooden box barely big enough for 2 people who didn't want to look at each other. At first, Elias tried to do everything alone. He rose before dawn, stoked the fire, pulled on his ice-covered coat, and fought his way to the barn to tend the animals. He came back soaked, frozen, and silent. He set a bucket of milk on the table and stayed on his side of the cabin, fixing tools or staring into the flames like he wished she wasn't there. Miriam refused to be useless. She had not survived Philadelphia just to sit and wither in Wyoming. On the 4th morning, she reached for the water bucket at the same time he did. Their hands brushed. Elias pulled back fast like her touch burned him. "I will do it," she said. "It's 10 below freezing," he muttered. "Put it down." "I have a coat. I have hands." "I live here too." He stared at her, jaw tight, breath showing in little clouds. Then something in her eyes stopped him, a strength he didn't expect. "Fine," he said, "but don't wander past the woodpile." It wasn't kindness, but it was a start. Day by day, the silence turned into something else. She cooked meals that tasted warm even in the cold. He fixed things without slamming tools anymore. She chopped wood like she had done it her whole life. He watched her out of the corner of his eye, surprised every time she matched him in work. One night, the storm finally calmed, but the quiet was worse. Miriam woke screaming. Her nightmare dragged her back into memories she never spoke aloud. She thrashed against the blankets, gasping for breath. Elias rushed to her side, grabbing her shoulders, trying to wake her. "Miriam, you're safe!" She fought him blindly and the front of her nightdress slipped. The firelight showed the scars on her back. Deep, thick, twisted scars that told stories she prayed no one would ever know. Elias froze. Not in disgust, not in judgment, in pain. He had seen men torn apart in war. He had seen wounds that no human should survive. But this was cruelty carved into a girl's skin before she ever had a chance to live. "Who did that to you?" he asked, voice low. "It does not matter," she whispered, pulling the blankets up to her chin. "It was a long time ago." "It matters," he said softly. "Was it the man in Philadelphia?" "No," she said. "It was before. Some men don't care about the law, they care about power. And I was young." Elias sat back on his heels. His face had changed. The hardness was gone. The anger, too. What replaced it was something she had not seen from him before. Respect. "You're safe here," he said. "I'll keep watch." And he did. All night. He didn't sleep until she did. The next morning, he spoke slower. Softer. He watched her less like a problem, and more like someone fighting her own war in silence. But even as the cold between them melted, danger waited where they least expected it. Days later, the sun broke through for the first time. They worked in the barn together. He repaired tools, she cleaned stalls. A tiny calf tangled in rope caught Miriam's eye, and she rushed to help it. The mother cow panicked, nearly crushing her against the wall. "Get back!" Elias shouted. He stormed toward her, fear exploding out of him like lightning. He yanked her free and shook her shoulders, more scared than angry. "She could have killed you. Miriam, out here you'd die from a broken rib same as a bullet." Quote. Miriam pulled her arm away. Her eyes were bright with anger and hurt. "I am not Jacob," she said quietly. His breath left him. Her name hit him harder than the storm. "I know," he whispered. "I'm sorry." That afternoon, disaster struck again. Elias was repairing a rotted beam in the loft when the ladder slipped under him. He kicked it away so it wouldn't crush her, and the whole beam came crashing down. "Miriam, move!" She slipped in the straw. The beam was falling straight toward her. Elias didn't think, didn't breathe, didn't hesitate. He threw himself at her, wrapped his arms around her, and rolled them both out of the way just as the timber smashed into the floor with a thunderous crash. They landed tangled in the hay, his body over hers, their hearts slamming against each other. "Are you hurt?" he rasped. "No," she breathed. "You saved me." They stared at each other in the warm, dusty light. His hand lifted to her cheek, gentle, trembling, but when he touched her, a ghost from her past rose up, and fear struck her like a bolt of ice. "Don't hurt me," she whispered. Elias froze instantly. His hand dropped. His whole body pulled back like he was the one touched by fire. "I would never hurt you," he said. "Not ever." He walked out into the cold sunlight, shaken to his core. That night, Miriam realized something. Every man before Elias had taken what he wanted. Elias stopped. For the first time, she felt safe, truly safe. And just when that new fragile trust began to form between them, a stranger arrived. A man with pale, cruel eyes. A man from Philadelphia. A man who knew her name. He remembered her face. He remembered the wanted flyer. He remembered the reward. And he wanted her. The moment he stepped on the porch, Miriam's whole future trembled like a leaf in a storm. The danger she had run from had finally found her. The man with the pale eyes stood at the bottom of the porch steps, his hand resting near his coat pocket. Miriam couldn't breathe. She knew that look. The hunter who had finally found his prey. "I saw a flyer about you in Cheyenne," he said. "Colored girl named Miriam, accused of stealing jewelry. Big reward." Quote. Her stomach twisted. Before she could answer, a deep voice cut through the cold air. "Get away from her." Elias stepped out from the side of the cabin, his rifle raised. His eyes were dark, steady, and full of threat. The stranger smirked. "She's a fugitive. I got every right to take her." "You touch her," Elias said, "and you won't make it back to town." The man hesitated. Elias didn't. He didn't lower the rifle. He didn't blink. He stood like a wall built from fear, rage, and something stronger. Love he didn't know how to say aloud. The stranger backed away, his grin gone. "The law will hear about this," he snarled. He mounted his horse and tore down the trail. But the damage was done. Miriam's hands were shaking. Inside the cabin, Elias took a step toward her. "Miriam!" She flinched. He stopped cold, guilt hitting him like a blow. "I would never turn you in," he said. "I would never let anyone take you." But she didn't look at him. She was staring at something else, the drawer. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was the wanted flyer. Her face. Her name. Theft. She held it up without speaking. Elias froze. "You knew," she whispered, "from the start. You knew who I was." "Miriam, listen." "You let me fall in love with you," she said, voice breaking, "without giving me the truth." The room felt like it couldn't hold them. Her betrayal was sharp and hot. "I thought you saw me," she cried. "Instead, you kept my whole life in a drawer." Her pain cut deeper than any winter wind. She grabbed her small carpet bag and walked out into the cold mud. "Miriam!" Elias called after her. She didn't look back. She walked the 5 miserable hours to Cheyenne, mud grabbing at her boots with every step. By the time she reached the marshal's office, she was soaked, exhausted, and shaking. "I'm Miriam Dubois," she said, voice raw. "I'm turning myself in." But she didn't get the chains, because the door exploded open. Elias stormed inside like thunder breaking loose. Silas Croft, the pale-eyed hunter, reached for her. Elias slammed him onto the desk. "Get your hands off my wife!" he roared. The whole room fell silent. "My wife?" Croft choked. Elias pulled a folded paper from his coat and shoved it into the marshal's hand. A marriage certificate. Signed. Dated. Stamped. Reverend Gideon and Mr. Hemlock stood behind Elias, pale but nodding. "Yes," the Reverend said. "I married them 6 weeks ago." The judge arrived moments later. He looked at the marriage paper. He looked at the wanted flyer. "In the law's eyes," the judge said slowly, "Miriam Dubois no longer exists. She is now Mrs. Thorne, a citizen of this territory. This warrant no longer applies." Croft exploded. "She's a thief!" "Then send the bill to me," Elias snapped. "I'll pay their lies, but she is not going anywhere." Everyone stared, except Miriam. She was staring at him. Elias laced his fingers through hers, right there in front of the whole town. "Let's go home," he said. She followed him out the door, tears burning her eyes for a different reason now. He had risked everything, his freedom, his ranch, his name, to protect her. They rode home in silence, not angry silence, a soft, shaking silence. Back at the cabin, Elias stoked the fire. He couldn't look at her. "I didn't want to trap you," he whispered. "I just couldn't lose you." Miriam stepped toward him. She took his hand. "I know why you did it," she said softly. "And I choose you, Elias, not because I must, because I want to." That night she led him to the bed. She removed the space between them. And she claimed him, heart and soul, as her husband. The seasons changed. The land came alive, their life blossomed. Miriam planted a garden that grew strong in the soft Wyoming sun. She tied her blue silk ribbon in her hair each morning. She fed chickens. She read books in the corner. She turned into a small home library. Elias fixed fences, trained horses, and always looked back at the cabin with a warm pride that softened every scar he carried. People began visiting. Curiosity at first. Respect soon after. Mrs. Hemlock brought sourdough starter. Travelers rested in the reading corner Miriam built. A mixed native family traded pelts with Elias and shared a quiet understanding with Miriam. Slowly, the Thorne Ranch became something it had never been before. A home. One night, after they survived a brutal summer storm together, chasing cattle, pulling frightened horses into the barn, laughing in the thunder, they collapsed in each other's arms, soaked and breathless. "You gave me back my breath," Miriam whispered. "You gave me something to live for," Elias murmured. Winter came again. The fire burned warm. Miriam mended his coat. Elias pulled her into his lap beside the hearth. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, love held strong. Two broken souls, healed by each other. Two lonely hearts, finding their place in the world. No longer fugitive and outcast. No longer stranger and rancher. Husband and wife. Chosen, bound, unbreakable.